Cool. All right. So today's topic is really all about automation in Salesforce. So I've posted the article online. I will share the screens so that all right. So can everybody see my screen or no one can? All right.
Yeah.
I couldn't see the video, so
we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Cool. All right, so I've got the training. So the topics that we're covering under workflow and process automation, 16%. It doesn't look like a very big section when it says these general topics. So given a scenario, identify the appropriate automation solution based on the capabilities of the tool, capabilities of flow, and the approval process. When I did it, I must confess, I wasn't very good at this section. I knew the theory, I didn't understand the practice. So the way that I understood and learnt was very much from this first article. And so from an exam preparation perspective, I strongly suggest understanding this section. And when it loads, there's this article that says, which automation tool do I use? And when you go through it, coming back down to this table here, you've got your 4 main types of automation and their potential usages. So I memorized this table. I understood this table as to why each of the different types of automation was available for each different area. You can see on the left that once you search, and this link is on the page, you can go into a lot more detail of these sections. So the way that I remember these was that workflow and approvals, and you can see over here at the table, a single if-then the statement. So I looked at those as the simple ones. Process builder and flow were more complicated. So you can see the complexity. So I automatically broke them up into those 2 components. And then I viewed it as one is triggered by a user and one is triggered by Salesforce. And for me, understanding those 2 key features made me understand and made me put them into their blocks and build upon those. You can see that there's a couple of, so process builder, it's triggered when a record is changed. So that's something like a birthday, checking a birthday. It's triggered in Salesforce. A user hasn't actually done anything. Flow builder. The big thing with Flow Builder is screens and automation. So where you've got complex things of if then else and there's multiple layers, Flow Builder. Workflow, that's another one of those when a record is changed. So if it's a simple change in the background, that's probably a better example for a birthday. Update their birthday. Send a message. The approval, you'd understand it from normal business processes of you've put in a leave request, you click something, you submit a record that goes to a manager for approval. Then there's a couple of other things that I thought were very timely to remember, whether things like Apex is called, and outbound messages. So they were a couple of the, and probably emails, there were a couple of the key things that I would remember. This table for me was the reason why I got a pretty high mark in this, but I wasn't actually very good when I passed the exam. I didn't have the experience that I really probably should have in the hands-on, because I just hadn't been in a workplace that gave me those challenges to think differently. Kiva, you're online, mate. Do you have any feedback on the questions regarding that?
It's a bit hard with them retiring a process builder and workflow. I don't see it in the topics covered in the exam, but when I did it and they had process builder in there, it was very important to pick something that wasn't this can do it. Like a flow can do everything you would like it to do, but it's not the simplest choice. It was, what's the simplest choice that I can use to solve this? And then, so if it was like updating a field, the simplest way of doing that would be a workflow.
Yeah. And coming back to this table, if it's basically a simple statement, then workflow is the best answer, whereas there might be multiple ways of doing it.
Yeah, and the second little caveat to it was, you only ever want one big form of process automation on one object. So if you already have a flow on an opportunity and you could do something else in a process builder, like you wanted to change multiple fields and have like multiple if else statements there, then you've already got a flow existing. So you should choose to develop your flow more than having a flow in a process builder. So,
is that in the exam, or is that just best practice?
There was some, I think there was one question like that in admin, and then there was two in app builder, but there was one in admin where it was like, you've already got a flow, now do this, which one should you use? Like process builder, flow, and all of them. And yeah, the answer is use the one you already have.
Awesome.
Is there a theoretical thing behind that? Is it more efficient? Is it sort of less draining on computations, or why is that the best way to go?
It comes down to order of execution, where you can't. It will run the process automation of flow and process builder in the same step. At some stage, they'll call it, and you can't actually choose which one you do first. Say if you're writing Apex, that happens at a different time, so that's fine. But with process and work and flow, they happen. You can't choose which one happens first. So if there's something that's in your flow that is like it is reliant on something in the process builder, then you're gonna you can run into troubles there. So it's just good to have it all in the one.
That makes sense. You might get failures in process because the other calculation hasn't completed yet.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So and just to jump into that topic, because it is something that is really important in the multi-tenant architecture that is Salesforce. It chooses when things should be run. So this triggers an order of execution. I think it's a concept that really should be covered with this exam, but you don't need to memorize exactly what happens first. So on this, you can see that there's 20 steps with some additional considerations. And this is the way that you can understand that Salesforce will load the record. It will do a bunch of things. It will, before triggers, so you've got different types of triggers. You can see that that's where it saves the records, so that there's a whole heap of things that it does. So you can see step 4 is it does the validation. before it saves the record. Then it executes the after triggers so that once you save something, you might want to update it. You know, there might be some formatting or something like that. Then you will assign that record to a queue or a person or user. But you can't send that to a person until you save it. So then it's all of those logical, it's the way that Salesforce thinks in the background so that you can understand escalation rules, entitlements, all of those things happen in a way that manage the resources. And I haven't even touched on governor limits. And again, Kiva, nothing in the exam about governor limits?
No, I think just like the basic ones, like how many DML, how many SQL. I don't think there was anything touching on like email limits or anything like that. I think it was just those two basic ones when I did it.
I agree. I don't think there was anything like that. But can I just ask quickly, Cal?
Please.
I was reading that article, the one that's after this one. Is my understanding correct that Process Builder is being replaced by Flow? And that
Yes.
So
Flow is the future. It's as simple as that. When they built it, they hinted that other things would be retired. So Process Builder is really flows without that are scheduled. I wanted to mention about the workflow rules and Process Builder being retired. So this was just formally announced at Dreamforce, all of a week and a half ago. And the intention is that Flow should be the entry point into all of that automation. There will be tools designed to migrate from the old style to the new style. In a lot of the big old orgs that have lots of workflows and Process Builder, it kind of makes sense. Jumping forward, so in the declarative automation options, I've mentioned some here. I'm just going to quickly open up 2 YouTube videos. And the reason why I put these in, you can see that one was 2019, or one was 2020. When you go to this point in the video, I'm trying to pause it and it's beauty. So you can see that at this time, you only had the screen flow and the auto launched option. And you come around to what happened a year later, and they've added all these enhancements in there. So you've actually now got the scheduled flow, the record change flow, the platform event flow. So all of the work that Salesforce has been putting into automation is being put into Flow. So this is where low code, they've always had the idea that you can create forms in a low code platform, but this automation is catching up so that Flow is the way that you look at it. You know, when you're looking at when you're trying to support some of these older orgs, you have to kind of jump between a couple of different places to know where to look to find some of the automation. But yeah, so my point was really Flow has advanced a lot over the last couple of years. It continues to be the main point of investment in declarative automation in Salesforce. If you look at old resources online, they will probably not have the most current information. And little Blakey's a little bit upset, so you might hear some background noise of little guy.
Can I just jump in again? Sorry,
please do.
I won't jump in again. The current exam does have the option to choose Process Builder and workflows as options as well as Flow. Is that we should be learning about it because we need to historically, for orgs that used Process Builder, etc., we still need to know all this, even though it is going to be obsolete in the future. Is that right?
Yes. And it's not going to be obsolete for, if you look down here, sorry, I don't have that in this one.
Winter 23.
Yeah.
Cal.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's even longer than I thought.
Yeah.
So they're still going to be around.
It's still current. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of a technicality. They're definitely moving away from it. They wouldn't try and penalize anybody that has a little slightly older information. You can see that with this platform innovation, they're moving more and more into, so you've got your code builder, you've got your backup restore on platform, DevOps, so that you can migrate code easier, and this flow orchestrator. So you've got a whole heap of new features that are really adding value to that low code platform for the next, probably year, 2 or 3 even. They will include all of the same questions, just because you can still use it, you can still create it. So
I also think it's important to note that your flows, your processes builders won't stop, just stop working in winter 2013. You just won't be able to create any new ones, but your old ones will still be able, still function.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, cool. So I've got a couple of trailhead links in here. I've got some videos regarding the flow training, workflows and triggers. And I strongly suggest, it's one of those topics that I could explain it for a while. I'll explain those tricky points or the relevant points to the exam, but you really should get your hands a little bit dirty. I'll just log in quickly to a trailhead environment. Let me just go into which one. I'm thinking that I had one prepared, but I didn't. Can I go into, sorry, I should have had one of my environments already ready. Where was it? Flow. I started creating one, following the trailhead in Flow. I think it's that one that I just got to. And sorry, I should just go into a project. I'm looking for one of my environments. Where do we get to them? Need some on hold music. Okay, so this is the problem with walking in just before the meeting and not getting set up. So I'll go straight into setup, and on the left hand side here, if you go down to process automation, you can see all of the different items that we would cover in process automation. So approval processes, you would go in and you would click what object you would want for your approval process. Then you would, simply like this, and I'll go into and edit. The approval process will go through this workflow. There's trailheads on this so that you can really easily just get your hands dirty and you can understand it. And once you've done it a couple of times, you know how simple it is and how it's just that one step. The automation home, I haven't really used much. Flows I'll come back to. Next best action. I don't believe that there's many questions on this because it's relatively new. It's really about using the AI capabilities of the platform to predict what your next response should be. I don't believe that there will be many questions on that. There's a whole heap of online content. I think you get about, there's a freemium capability. So you get your, I think it's your first 5,000 free. So you can get online and try it. Paused and failed flow interviews. I'll come back to that. Post templates, process builder, we'll just jump down to that. This is where, and you can see that I haven't got any. And you can see again, if you think about process builder being one of those things in the background that monitors and waits for an action to happen, these are the actions that would occur. So when a record changes, it gets reallocated to a queue or something like that. And this is the most common one that I've used. We save that. So that's effectively the trigger. You can add which object that you're going to look for. So opportunity. So when an opportunity is created or edited. So every time it's edited, it will sit in the background and it will do this check. Save that. Then you add your criteria. So again, it's just doing your, what are you looking for on that object? Are you looking for the price to go over $1 million or something like that, so that you can then say, if it's a tree, if it hits $1 million, do this. If it hits $2 million, then it's the next criteria, then do something else. So yeah, again, I strongly suggest having some time and going through the trailheads to get your hands dirty a little bit on that. Workflow rules and actions. So this is, again, the way that workflow rules are, the way that workflows are set up is that you have your assets. So the things that are going to happen. So your alerts, your field updates, your outbound messages, they're all set up. So, and I don't think I've got one there. What have I got? Probably not. Email, should have an email. So, and again, always good. I know boys are very bad with instructions and we just click past them, but it's good to read it the first time. So this is where you've got a couple of different emails, and so those emails are set up in one area, and your rules about the workflow are set up in another area. So that doesn't have a rule, but you can see how the logic is with workflows. It was set up a little bit differently. I think that's a bit of a legacy from when they built Classic, but again, it's probably not going to matter too much. Gonna jump into flows because flows are the future. What I think this is the new one that I created when I was following one of the Trailhead.
Sorry, so I don't know if I just jump in quickly.
Please
Joel?
do, mate.
Yeah, it's also important to know that while Process Builder and Flow are a lot more powerful than workflows, that of those three options, workflow is the only one that can do outbound messages. And you might have a couple of questions about that in your exam. It's like, oh, you want to do an outbound message, and you were, oh, you could use Flow, but you'd have to call Apex. So yeah, in questions like that, the answer they might be looking for would be workflow.
So I thought it was both of those.
Yeah. Sorry, but in the like context of workflow, workflow, Process Builder, and Flow.
Yep. And I think Keeve is just giving you a hint on one of the most popular questions in the exams. There's almost always one about outbound messages. So, and again, I don't understand the logic behind why you can't do it with Flow and Process Builder. But I memorized that table, and that's yeah. So coming back to Flow Builder, and Kiva, continue to jump in and add value, mate, because it's been a long time, and I think that when I did the admin exam, Flow Builder was just being introduced, so it was on the exams, but it was clunky and not really close to what it is at the moment. The first thing is when you, and I'll jump back a little bit, one step, when you go to create a new flow, the first option that you get is whether you want to go old school or new school. And by that, I mean, I do a screen flow, freeform, and auto layout. So I'll jump back to the different types of flows, but I just wanted to show you this because the difference is, it tends to be that it adds things in line. I'll just add. Just try and make this as horrible as possible. You have 3 errors. I don't care enough. I like to click that back, and the difference is the old way. On the left-hand side, you see manager. If you don't see elements, you're using it in the new way. And you've got to click on the inside. Most of the instructions that you see on trailheads or help documentation assume that you use the old way and you go to elements. If you can't find elements, it's because you're using that auto layout. So, and you see that the difference again is that you've got an end and that plus sign. It's not really a big thing because you've got the select elements button up the top, but I'm just pointing it out because if you start following some of the instructions and they don't quite look right, that's what it is. So going over to elements, you've got, and I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail because you really just need to play around with this a little bit. Interactions, so quite often you will use a screen, and I might go back to the other example from the trailhead. Actions, subflows. So you can call a flow from a flow. The logic, so just like in the same as Excel when you're doing formulas, you can do lookups and stuff like that, loop through records, and grab records. So these are basically your database operations. Go and get all of your accounts, all of your contacts, all of your opportunities, and do those kinds of things. I'll jump back to the previous example. I didn't have that open. So if we just probably run this one, see how we go. So what you're seeing here is, and I'll go back to it and show you in a moment, but this is a screen flow. So I've got some kind of, I'll put in some rubbish data and I'll link that contact to an existing account, Edge Communications. That's basically like, so I'll just create a new contact. Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. But that's, and I got an error on my phone. So you start a flow, you've got an input. So let's double click onto that and go into the screen. You've got, okay, so you've got your inputs on the left over here. You can drag them over. So a lookup, if I want a new field on that, it's simple drag and drop. And you can configure each of these elements. So double click on that. You've got your name, what it is to display, how it's all going to be mapped, visibility, so that you can do dynamic forms, and you can see where you're going to store information. So if somebody types in the first name here, what does it map to? So let me just close that. And what's this doing? So this is getting the records, deciding whether to update it or not. So you go and create a new one if you're not, you can either update an existing record. So let me just jump onto that. So you're looking at the contact object, your first name, last name. So it's basically just doing a match on the first record. So again, this is really going to be a quick explanation, because it's one of those things. There's so much information online. You can watch hours and hours of somebody explaining it to you, but until you get your hands dirty, you start making mistakes and finding out the way that you learn best. By all means, get in contact with us if you get stuck. It happens a lot. We all have a learning process that we go through. The other thing to look at is this debug. And I probably should jump over. Oh, let's just click, click, click. So I should, yeah, there it goes. I've just got an email saying that there was an error. And I can see on the debug here that I ran this. Get records. Last name couldn't be resolved. What did I do? So contact last name. I don't know. I'm not going to spend time on it because I will make this the most boring meeting in the world. Okay, so please.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that, I mean, in that sort of situation, with that's where you need to be kind of, you need forethought around your error handling?
It's, you'll get the instructions. So there's always the, you always need to be careful with your errors and making sure that if you're doing a So Kiva and Harrison are much better at this because they're using it a lot more than I am. But yeah, making sure that it's bulletproof and that only the records, so avoiding nulls. If no records are returned in a collection, what are you going to do? There's a lot of standard cases that you need to adjust for, and there's flows are almost never as simple as this.
Yeah. And you would build that all in as part of the flow.
Yep.
Okay.
Kiva, any comments, mate?
Yeah, so you'd normally do a lot of testing like this to make sure if there's anything in the background that's going wrong, and make sure the flow is robust enough to handle that. You would generally put in error handling when in circumstances where you know exactly where it's going to go. So for example, if you needed to put in a number, like a number field, and the number was blank, you know, like when that happens, exactly what the error is going to be and why it's going to happen. So then you can put out a decision tree and go, oh, cool. If this happens, display this message. Error handling, it's good when it's very specific. But for faults like Cal was getting, it'd be better to, run the debug log yourself, figure it out, make the flow a bit more robust. And then if there was something that he found that was causing the error, then putting a specific message when that occurred.
Yeah, like for a predictable and legitimate situation, that's where you want to handle it so that users know what's going on.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it's good practice because with all programming, so Salesforce uses Apex as their coding language, and I've included a couple of topics down the bottom regarding triggers. So if a trigger is required, you code it up. To put it into production, you need 75% code coverage on your test cases. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're thinking about how you're going to test it. You just don't build it, throw it into production. And that's where the multi-tenanted architecture of, if your instance of Salesforce is on the same server as a whole bunch of other people, and you do something that takes all of the resources and hurts their other instances, Salesforce is going to get a whole heap of complaints. So they've built it in such a way that you need to be careful at each and every step so that you don't steal all the resources and cause them problems. So governor limits and the test first, the test driven development are all concepts that are derived from their sharing the resources. They don't want somebody to get upset because you've made a mistake. There's a lot of architectural decisions that Salesforce has made with that principle in mind. So sometimes it doesn't make sense until you have used it for a while. Sometimes Salesforce makes some odd decisions, and some of those decisions might be 15 years ago and they've just built on them, and that's one of those principles. So a lot of people who don't like tools like a platform like Salesforce and want to go and build their own code, it's because somebody else made those decisions. Before I continue ranting too much, I'll just jump back quickly and go back to that step that I missed, which is at that initial stage, you can trigger, your flow is set up with one of those 5 options at the moment. I'll just jump over and show you the templates. So you've got more templates here. Reset password template. You kind of know what would happen there. So you can go and create one from the template, and you can see that that's you understand from a resetting a password, it's not a really complicated process, but you can see there's a whole heap of decisions there to make sure that that error checking just doesn't create errors. And so that's a really good example of something that is a simple process that is spread out, and you can see that there's a logical process of you're getting the contact. Did you find the contact? If you did, then do that. If you didn't, you go down a different way. You know, the jumping back, and I know I'm jumping around a lot, so I apologize if anybody's getting feeling like they're at the wrong show. I will jump, create a new one again. And this is why they give you development environments, so that you can muck around and see how things are working. Schedule trigger, you want something to run as a batch in the middle of the night. You want an alarm clock, you want to do anything like that. Scheduled trigger, record trigger, and look, I could read exactly the definition on the screen, and I could put on my deep, sexy voice, but it's not going to make it any more interesting. So I don't have a deep, sexy voice, Kiva, if that's what you're worried about. So
That's just your normal voice. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate it. This topic, obviously, I've been talking too long. I'm going to stop the recording now before I embarrass myself any further. So I'll stop the recording and we'll discuss informally and see if anybody's got any questions. All right, that's better now.
I didn't know my screen could render the color of your cheeks, Kel.
It
went all pink there.
No, that's I get that around Kiva all the time. So
you're going to edit that last bit out or leave it in?
It doesn't bother me.
Surprise for watching to the end.
Yeah, Easter egg. So yeah, the flows, once you get the hang of them, sometimes they do take a while to get used to. It's the low code option. Low code is a real big buzzword. If you can understand the automation and you can get this working well, it's a really good attribute. It's something that it brings everything together. And I say that, and I get the guys to do a lot more of it than I do, because you know, as I mentioned before, Kiva and Harrison, you need time to make sure that it doesn't go and create errors. You don't want to rush something and put it in production if it is going to create errors. Saying that, because you don't have to create test cases and you don't do the coding aspects, a declarative option is a fraction of the time of code. So creating a screen flow for automation is probably about a quarter of the time of doing the same thing in code. Any other questions? So, yeah, and I sound like a broken record. I strongly suggest playing around, doing some of those trailheads. And if you don't, and you run out of time, just memorize that table. You'll get, Bronte, what's up? Do you have a question?
Sorry, just a real quick question. It might be a silly one. Ignore the music in the background if you can hear it.
No, can't hear it.
So practicing with the flows, was that one of the links that you included on how we can kind of test flows and kind of play around with them while kind of following the trailhead? Was that one of your links, or is there another way to kind of? So
this, so build flows in the flow builder. So there's this guy here. So Shrey, I'm just going to open up two links. So I started working through these because I hadn't done them before. got to that flow builder one. And when did I do that? So I did that on the weekend. So the second one was that a couple of days ago. And Shrey, he calls himself Salesforce Hulk. And I don't know why he's not green or anything. Yeah. And so you can see, I'm just going to stop that here. Hour and 52
you're not sharing
minutes.
your screen.
Oh,
Can't see your
you
screen.
missed the whole thing. Good thing I didn't record that. I look like a twit. All right, so jumping back, build flows with Flow Builder. It says 3 hours and 55 minutes. This is the stuff that I ran through without showing anybody. So there's a couple of quick ones, and then this one here. If somebody hasn't already worked out, if you've got 4 steps and it's 400 points, there's not a project. If it's 5 steps and not 500 points, you could see there that there's 3 projects that are hands-on. So every time you do something hands-on, it's 500. So let me just jump into that. Make sure your flow works. This will be testing. It will come down. And so that's the question. That's the 100 one. If I jump on to the next one, it should be the, yeah, so you launch, you need to do that. So those, and so that step there is about 25 minutes. Jumping back to building flows. So that, so you can see that I ran out of time for that one, because what is that? That's, they think that that one there is about 2 hours. So
Salesforce is going to revoke your license. You haven't done this.
What?
Salesforce is going to revoke your partnership. You haven't done this for you.
Well, you know, like they can wait. So, and I haven't. I'll refresh this, because you guys got to see the Salesforce Hulk. He doesn't look like Bruce Banner or anything. He's just, you know, like, I was thinking, is it Salesforce Hunk or something? You know, like, why would you call yourself Hulk? You know, like, I just want to see him get really angry with Salesforce and turn, you know, big and muscly and green. But
The Edward Norton version of the Hulk,
yeah, totally.
not the Ruffalo version.
So not the cuddlies, yeah. So he has these tutorials, and he became an MVP because he puts out so much content. This video goes for almost 2 hours and explains the different processes and stuff. His communication is pretty good. I don't really tend to like his handwriting much, but the old school versions were that he would be in front of a blackboard and do everything in chalk and blackboard, which was, you know, like, kudos for him to explain it and everything. But I was like, I don't even know where I could get a blackboard nowadays. Holly, you got an educational partner?
Huckleberry. He's my 26 kilo lap dog. Not that heavy, somewhere in there. He's been doing this since he was a puppy, and it's just not stopped.
Cool, very cool. Yeah, I think that there's handy things in the Shrey's stuff. He's got a lot of bite-sized bits of content which are, you know, 10 minutes long. And I think, I believe that in this, I just had a look at it the other day because I hadn't seen it. So he's got some free courses, and like this one's a premium, but you can, and when I flick down to what the cost was, it's not in USD, it's in rupee, and believe that, well, I did a quick look up and that was about what was it, $22 or something like that. So his content is pretty good. On that topic, Mike Wheeler, so media. So Mike Wheeler Media, if you're going to get content for the admin course, I got oh geez, I don't know where it is anymore, but there's an admin course that he does on Udemy. It costs about $20 or something like that. That's what I got many years ago, and I thought it was just it was probably the best resource available at the time. I can't really see it at the moment, but his content is pretty good. If you want to look at exam questions, what is it? Focus on Force. So Focus on Force. Oh, I shouldn't do the login. Go to the website. So you've got the options, and so certifications, courses. So let's go to, is it just, could be that one, 201. Makes sense.
Carol, can I just add something real quick?
Go, please.
I found that the Trailhead exam prep, even though it was probably a bit out of my depth, actually doing the exam questions on each, each different weighted section, doing that a couple of times and doing the flashcards was freaking amazing at what it taught me that I didn't know and was able to learn from really fast. It was awesome.
Yep. What I was going to show you, it was finally down here, which is they do practice, Focus on Force do practice exams, and they do a study guide. They work out to be about $18 each or something or thereabouts. Martin, who creates them, I believe is in Queensland somewhere at the moment. Really nice guy. Yeah, is he northern New South Wales or Queensland? And these practice exams for $18, considering a lot of the exams are 200 US, so about $300. They're really good value. There's not a whole lot of places that you can get practice exams that are either not ripped off exactly what the questions are, and again, you don't know whether those questions are accurate or not. There's a big thing on if you like if you find a what do they call them, like dumps or something like that, exam dumps with the questions, that you avoid it, because half the time you don't actually know whether the answer is right. So if you do ever see any of those questions, use the question, try and get the answer, figure out what the answer is. If somebody says the answer is B, don't assume that is correct. And if you do need to use those, you're gonna lose. You're not going to be able to get into the workforce. You're not going to be able to use that section. So it's kind of not the point of. I still think that certifications are what you can do to have a conversation with somebody. They give you a base level of understanding, but you need to have 6 months experience in each of the clouds to really understand it and be competent in it. So it's the difference of, you can go and get a job because you're certified, but you might not be able to keep the job if you don't know what you're doing. Any other questions? This is really kind of quick overview of a topic that is You know, considering the automation is such a big capability in the platform, and it's a big differentiator. I skimmed over it. I've shown you the key thing is that table, which automation, because the exam topic is how do you pick which one is the appropriate. This is the reference that it will look at. On the left-hand side, you can of this page, you can see how much content there is. It will explain it to you, but really get your hands dirty with understanding the limitations. Try around, have a practice project and things like that. It's really worth understanding. All right. If anybody, any last questions before I have dinner? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
Phil.
you.
See you next week.
See ya.
Yeah.
All good? Cool. I am stopping sharing. I'm gonna go get some food.